Hello everybody, my name is Scraggy, and today I'm going to be ripping off the card game YouTuber reads answers from his audience instead of making real content shtick. So, yesterday, I asked you a question. What off-meta decks do you swear have a good matchup into Bavsargra? That deck is really resource efficient, has high pressure center lines and high powered sides, has decent filter, extra guard, and a lot of the meta cannot compete with her, which is why they are tier 2, tier 3. But if the meta can't take her down, what about the off-meta? Here's an answer I really do believe can do it. Zorga Nadir is a deck that I love to rag on because Zorga players love to talk about how good Zorga is and then do nothing. But in all honesty, I do think that the control variant of Zorga has a really good matchup into Bavsargra. The deck has a lot of ways to get access to perfect guards through bouncing it with Shadow Cloak after milling it off something. They have a lot of ways to kind of put pressure on with RPDs, and because of the RPDs, they can lose their units at the front row, deny the draw, and not actually lose anything of value. I've seen many a Zorga player defeat Bavsargra, and I know a lot of people online share this sentiment as well, which we'll get to in a bit. But let's see what you guys came up with. Speaking of Zorga, Johnny FBA says that me and Wolfred have been Zorga stand buddies for years now, and we've even said that it takes a hell of a lot to take down Bavsargra. But pure Nadir has it. Between unsettling numbers, the new pomegranate being a free cloud of miasma, and the front row always negating the draw effect, it's beyond positive. And the funny thing is that it's been like that since inception. The matchup has been 8-2 since Zorga forever, and no plus 10 right line can change that. So obviously I already agree that Zorga can do it, but Zorga players, they just have to make me understand that Zorga can do it. They're too used to people saying they can't. But yeah, I think Zorga right now is in a really good spot, specifically into Bavsargra. I think Zorga does struggle a lot into other decks in the format. I think into Minerva it's a little iffy, into Vaserug I would probably say it's iffy. But yes, I do agree, obviously Zorga can do it. It is really a matter of player pilot, and it comes down a lot to the build. The build of Zorga varies a lot. And it is funny that you do mention Wolfren, because I've seen Wolfren online on Twitter, and he has said it before, and that was a real fun day of Zorga discourse. Ace Trainer 69 says you can attack Verlord/Trickmoon with Clarissa, and Oscar in that same vein is kind of saying that Kaiser Vermillion with the Order Eternal Thunderbolt could bind some of Bavsargra's key cards. What both of these answers kind of come down to is being able to attack/remove the Verlord/Trickmoon, or I guess in the case of Vermillion, you can at least attack stuff like Yukmashot as well to remove the board while you play the game. The issue with these answers is that then the deck doesn't do anything from there, so I remove one Yukmashot and Bavsargra says, okay cool, I'll call the next one, and then here's 5 attacks and you still die. It's also not like Trickmoon and Verlord are like blast tokens, right? Like you can just get more. Especially if you're just like Clarissa and you're attacking the back row. Cool, Bavsargra effect, put one arm on and then boom 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 it's back. It's an answer that works to stop one thing but can't handle the rest. These are answers that kind of tunnel in on really specific pain points people have with Bavsargra but can't actually capitalize on them properly. Yes, you can remove the Verlord once, can you do it again and again, and do you even have the time to do that before turn 4 comes and they persona right and they call the 2 Yukmashots they saved? So, think bigger guys. Normally I win the games against the Bavsargra player of my store with Varga and Draald, however I don't think he is very good, says Goncalo Mendez. Elfwitch, I really like this answer because it just admits that his opponent isn't very good. Which, in fairness, is how I have beat any Bavsargra player in my life, that they just don't pilot the deck to its full efficiency. And in fairness to some of those players, I also lose to them anyway, so, you know, neither here nor there. But I do want to focus a lot on Varga. Draald I don't think can do it consistently. I think it might be a bit of luck. And even with Magnus now, I still don't think he can do it. But I do think that Varga kind of has the sauce. We saw this in Osaka where Dream topped and the final game of his was a Varga versus Bavsargra game, and it did look pretty dominant. Varga does have large enough wipe that Bavsargra would lose more units than, say, Clarissa attacking one thing in the back row. And Varga actually has some hand and some board pressure by hitting face a lot. The issue, of course, is just Varga loses to himself. You know, sometimes you just don't draw Rakshasa, sometimes you don't check crit. But with the new Dino Fest, you might be able to do it more often. So don't give up on Varga just yet. No matter what anyone on the internet says, it's not just a fraud deck. But it is pretty close. I do agree with that, actually. Never mind, don't play Varga. Please don't play Varga into me. Don't do it. I just have no ulterior motives. Pine85 with a great answer. Eva can beat any deck, and if it goes first, it can throw a lot of early pressure before the shield comes online. Also, IMO, Eva can low-key beat any deck if the player is good enough Lamau. Nothing to Lamau about there. Eva on paper is one of those decks that looks like it could do it because you can use stuff like the Order to stop them from retiring your Obfuscate, so you always have the 20k shield. When in actuality, what happens is that you don't play the Order so that they don't get the draw, and then you can still play the game out like that. Eva's one of those decks that can really do it with like the right triggers, with the right skill of the pilot. I think Eva's very good in that regard. And it just got a lot more offensive pressure with the new Magnedaze card, so I do think it can take these games. In fact, so far I would say Eva's probably the deck that could win more often than not against Bavsargra and the rest of the meta. But I mean, come on. You don't need me to tell you how good Eva is. You see it every locals you go to. You know how good Eva is. Tired's always says that as an Impalio player that they have had success in 2 buffs. The matchup gets worse in set 10 as deck space tightens, but using a few copies of Radio Arane and your high native bulk, you can pressure them into playing copies of Yukmashat, living the push turn and sniping them puts you in a really good position. Their 20k shield matches poorly into Impalio too. Then you have a really strong early game. I genuinely think it's pretty good. In that same vein, up here, IO_OI said that they once won using Impalio against the buff using the global restriction because of the new grade 2, and the amount of shield Impalio can get is crazy. I basically held long enough to wear buff's hand down and beat it on the 5th turn. Quite frankly, I do think Impalio can kind of take a game against it. It's one of those Brenge decks where you can check Eldo, Breath, and Life is good, or you could check 6 blanks in a row and Life is bad. But it does have the capability to do it if you save the Divine Skill. If you thin the deck out a lot, you can check enough to crack into Bavsargra. Just that Impalio struggles into literally everything else, and his restander is bad. But aside from that, great deck. Jack Curtis 8058 says that Prison is my go-to against this deck. The Dragnet Order that can imprison all back row gets around Verilord target restriction. Yeah. I guess I agree with that. I'm not sure about the Dragnet Order, but in general, I do think Prison has a pretty good matchup into Bavsargra. Prison is one of those decks that has a pretty high skill cap, and a lot of it has to go right for her, but I think the Seraph player could theoretically get into a position where Bavsargra has grinded out and can't guard the multi-attacks with the high crits. And it gets even scarier because we know that Seraph is getting an upgraded form, so we'll go for that. I have somehow beaten a Bavsargra deck using the Nightrose Stride Deck deck, but with 8 crits. What do you want me to say about that, Winston? What do I say about this one? Nightrose is a deck that looks like it could do it, right? I think in the same vein of Eva, you could theoretically have the front row high intercept that just gets retired anyway to deny the draw. But a lot of Nightrose's guard comes from using the Hostage Order, of which they can mace down, and it's tougher than it looks to deal with. It also sucks that Nightrose as a Stride deck is going to lose a lot of games in general because Stride decks are really bad this format, and have been for about as many formats since Nightrose came out. But I could see a world where you theoretically live to the late game and get there, but it's just not very likely. I don't think this is a special answer, mind you, running 8 crits. Please run 8 crit and just kill Bavsargra, I guess. I guess that's the moral of the story, run 8 critical, whatever. Daniel West says, Archetype top tier. After surviving the first grade 3, it has good draw and easy field creation with Infinity Persona. PS, deck thinning is probably one of the best in the game. Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess if you do survive the first grade 3 turn, you have to survive that, but you can get there. So, Infinity Persona is one of those things I don't think matters as much as we think it does. Buffs games end by like 5 or 4, and if you don't beat them by then, Bavsargra tends to outvalue you because they have a ton of stuff that comes back for free. I'm not sure about good draw with Archetype, not too familiar on that end. But easy field creation, I do agree with now with Magnedaze, and there's a ton of ways that you can put a lot of pressure into Bavsargra, meaning that you can let your units retire, deny the draw, and you can keep on the offensive. I think that the grade 3 that Archetype has that gains crit and sucks 5k off is one of the best cards against Bavsargra just because it has high pressure early. I think Archetype's ability to find perfect guards off the top with their Torrential Energy research is also one of the best ways to deal with Bavsargra because it stops their high power center and can deal with the high power sides as well. So, not a bad answer, I guess. Ron Slayer 5786 says, running into buffs. I actually like Shojo Doji, and never felt like buffs is a problem. Yeah, she's tough, but won 9 out of 10 matches versus her only losing to the double crit gambit. So I do think Shojo Doji kind of has a good way to do it. Shojo Doji, obviously one of the best decks of set 3, and now it's after the nerfs and as the meta has progressed, it is slowing down a lot, but Shojo Doji still sees representation in a lot of top cuts. Shojo Doji can actually bind the Verilord because it binds the circle, not the unit itself, and has a way to put it back to the deck. But putting it back to the deck is basically like removing it from play for Bavsargra until they shuffle the deck or until they check top 5 again. So it's not as easy to get it back with, as say, with an attack, like from Clarissa. Still, Shojo Doji is one of those decks I feel has to go first to beat Bavsargra. I think if you go second, you just kind of get run over. But hey, I don't think Shojo Doji is that bad of an answer here. I just think Shojo Doji is like, it's kind of like Zorga and Eva in that you need a really good pilot to make it work. I don't think it just plays itself in that manner. So what have we learned from this thread? Well, firstly, I think it's good that we can identify decks that we like that are pet decks that can do well into the meta thread. I think it's important as card game players that we don't write off any off-meta deck just because it is off-meta. There are lots of strategies that we have that can match really good into specific metagames, but then just don't do as well into others. I was bringing Orpheus last format into my WGP, you can check the video out there, and I did win all my games against Bavsargra just by having high pressure before they could capitalize on my weekend. So I think it's great to keep trying things into a deck that seems unbeatable and untouchable in top cuts. Frequently in Vanguard, it's not really about a deck's actual power level and more about how it matches into the metagame, but I'm still not respecting Zorga.